Hey, welcome everybody. Yamani, welcome. Good morning. We've got another FairFigure webinar and our illustrious guests with us today, Danica Edwards from Creditsafe and Aaron, our CEO. How you guys doing?
Doing well. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah.
Doing well,
Lisa,
thank
Tyler,
you.
good morning. All right. Well, guys, we got Gigi in backstage here answering your comments as always. And we might have another presenter today. Technology is giving us a challenge. But guys, really quick before we dive in, where are you calling from? What part of the country or world? Just drop a comment. So again, today's webinar, Beyond the Score, behind the scenes of a Creditsafe business credit report. Creditsafe is one of the biggest credit bureaus in the world. And so we're really lucky to have them today to kind of peek behind the curtain. All right, it's like Wizard of Oz. There's the man behind the curtain. We're going to get to see that, what few other people are able to do. So we've got Danica Edwards with us. She's the Senior Global Enterprise Strategic Account Manager. And we've got Bill in the backstage here. And there he is for a surprise entrance. Welcome, Bill.
Sorry about that, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries at all. We've got people hopping in now, so your timing is perfect. And Bill, you are the Director of Client Strategy. So welcome. Glad to have both of you guys. And today we're looking forward to hearing from you. Before we dive in, though, would you guys mind just giving us a brief? Would love to hear a little bit more about your career, your background, and what brings you with us here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Bill. All right. So my name is Danica, guys. I'm excited to present with Bill today and work with the FairFigure team. I've been with Creditsafe since 2013, so I've got 10 plus years of industry experience. I am an account manager at Creditsafe, so I assist and help and onboard all of our clients, so they have an easy time getting on board with us.
Thanks, Danica. Hello, everyone. My name is Bill James. As Garrett mentioned, I'm the Director of Client Strategy for Creditsafe North America. I've been with the firm now for 4.5 years. Prior to that, I spent many years at Dun & Bradstreet in various vice presidential roles. I've worked in third-party risk and compliance, finance analytics, advanced data for the better part of 15 years. I have a finance background earlier in my career. So I come from the practitioner side to the, data and analytics side. So excited to chat with everybody today.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. And then Aaron, we all know you, but just for people who haven't been on a webinar before, could you give us a quick intro as well?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I know we have a lot of webinar frequent flyers here, which is great. I see some familiar names in the chat, so it's nice seeing you all. And thanks for showing up. Aaron here, CEO and co-founder. I had my other co-founder Felix in the chat here, so if you want to say hello, probably say hello to you as well. My background, entrepreneur, just like you guys. I had a web design company. I was doing vacation rentals. I had a t-shirt manufacturing company. So I understand the needs of the business owner, and that's kind of where FairFigure came from. My background's in software engineering. I found the need that, as a small business owner, my credit cards were maxed out, and I went to the bank to get, my SBA loan, and they laughed at me. And you guys have all been there, and that's probably why you're in the chat right now. So we need to find a better way. A way that we could bring the data that these underwriters are using to us. We could understand, where we stand with the underwriters, and then techniques to build these scores in an organic and, honest way, where there's so many shortcuts you could take with short results. But kind of how we built it is we want to build longevity, and we want to kind of be your co-pilot. So that's where I came from, and that's kind of what we're doing here.
Awesome. Well, glad to have everybody on our call. Wealth of experience, deep experience in the business credit industry here. So Bill and Danica, please take it away. We'd love to see what you guys have for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Garrett. So guys, a couple things that we're going to talk about today. We are going to see and take a look at what's beyond the score, right? So one of the questions I get from clients, from friends of mine who are, entrepreneurs and building their own businesses is, hey, how do I build business credit? What do these things do for me? What do I need to do? And then again, how do I evaluate my customers that may be paying me late, and or how do I pick the right vendors? So we're going to dive into a couple different things here. So I'm going to share my screen. Garrett, Aaron, Danica, if somebody could just let me know in 1 second here. Let's see here.
I'm seeing John Wood from Bedford, New Hampshire. We've got Elizabeth McKee calling in from Raleigh, Indiana. Ella from Northampton, Massachusetts. I saw somebody from Guatemala, Alex Urbina from Guatemala. Okay, there's the presentation. Yeah, thanks. You guys are coming in from all over the place.
That's pretty cool too. So I know Creditsafe is huge with international data. So it's cool seeing people kind of chime in from outside the States because it's a great tool for you as well, especially if you do business. I don't know. I see a lot of people in California, like I know doing business in Mexico is quite common. We have Creditsafe here, which, kind of runs the international credit space. So it's very cool seeing that.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And that's a perfect segue into who are we, right? So we went through Danica and myself and our backgrounds. A little bit about Creditsafe. We've only been in the United States for 13 years. Okay, so Danica mentioned she was here when the doors opened. So I think she had like an internship in middle school because she's still extremely young, right? But as a company, we were born in the late 90s and completely disrupted the commercial credit industry. So our founder was tired of how long it would take to do an evaluation on a company, whether it's a customer buying on credit or whether it's a supplier you're trying to do business with, how long it took to get information and credit reports. And I may be showing my age here a little bit, but the late 90s was basically the internet boom, right? So he created Creditsafe, which was a 100% online repository for B2B commercial credit reports, okay? So essentially made credit reports accessible to everybody. And it really changed how business was done. So over the years, we now have over 120,000 customers and over 500,000 users globally. We have 27 offices in 17 countries. And we are the fastest growing data aggregator in our space, averaging double digits every single year we've been in business. So while we might not be the most prominent name here in the United States, I could promise you that we will be. We are the number 2 provider now in just a short 13 years, catching up quickly on the number 1 provider in the US. So a couple things that we're going to touch upon that are the backbone to every company's commercial credit report. So commercial credit is vastly different than your consumer credit. I just want to start by saying your consumer credit file is very highly regulated, right? It's regulated by the FCRA, which is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And anyone who extends credit to you as a consumer has to report to, the credit bureaus. There isn't such a regulatory requirement on the commercial side here in the United States. In other countries around the world, there is, right? But here in the United States, there's no requirement for a business to report their financials to anybody, their revenue. There's no requirement for a supplier or a vendor to report how you're paying them as their customer, okay? There's no requirement for you to report your customers and how they're paying you, okay? It's all voluntary. The only people in the United States, the only companies that have to disclose their financials are publicly traded entities, okay? So what goes into a credit report and how can I build my credit report? Okay. So in a credit report, there's over 200 different data points. Okay. So these are some of the key data points. And we're later on in this webinar, we're going to look at some live credit reports. So you'll see some of these international and local risk indicators. Okay. So as companies' business footprints expand globally, they need to make sure that they're working with a data provider that can meet those needs both locally and internationally. Okay. And this is where Creditsafe has been able to garner a lot of market share because of our large global footprint. Okay. Days beyond terms, or DBT. This is how companies pay their bills, right? So, if you're extending terms to a customer on net 30-day terms, how are they paying everyone else, right? That's reporting on them. Are they paying them late? Are they paying on time? Are they paying early? Okay, these are things you would evaluate as you're onboarding new customers and decide to sell to them on credit. Credit limits and contract limits. How much credit should I be giving a company, right? They may ask for $10,000, $50,000, $250,000, $5 million in credit, but how do I know what's the right amount I should be extending them? And then trade payment data, which is going to be the first in-depth topic that we cover, because in the United States, trade payment data is the absolute backbone of every single commercial credit report. It's very difficult to make an informed decision without having trade payment data on a company. And you will encounter experiences when you pull a credit report on a company and there's very limited to sometimes no trade payment data available at all. This happens with a lot of newer companies and small to micro businesses, just because the vendors that they may be working with and paying don't report, their payment history to the main bureaus in the United States. Okay, so how do we overcome that? Adverse legal filings, right? Is this company have any, red tape that we should be aware of, such as previous bankruptcies? Is there a current bankruptcy on file? The last thing you want to do is extend credit to someone who's in bankruptcy, right? Are there any lawsuits against them that could be debilitating? Are there any judgments that have been rendered against the company that could, eat into their cash flow or their reserves? And then are there any liens, like tax liens? We track tax liens on a federal, state, and local level. And then you can also see UCC filings, which is collateralized loans. How leveraged is a company, potentially against their assets? And then when available, we also show what's called group structure, or whoever the ultimate holding company is. Who's their parent company? Are they tied to anyone legally that we should be aware of? Okay. Some of the data sources that we're grabbing data from. So a commercial credit report has over 9,000 different data sources. Our database updates dynamically in near real time, over 5 million times a day. Okay, so this is why you see so few companies participate in this space, because it takes a lot to curate and manage and maintain the data. Okay, these are some of the sources that we're able to disclose, but just know that we're pulling in, over 9,000 different data sources to compile a commercial credit report. Some of those sources are public, like you'll see listed on here. Some of them are private, like, trade payment data. And then some are semi-private. So trade payment data, this is your secret weapon. Without having trade payment data on your file, it's virtually impossible to build your credit profile. Okay. So, as I talk to entrepreneurs and business owners, in the beginning, they're like, Bill, how do I transition from having to sign and personally guarantee all of this stuff in my business's name to just establish business credit so I can just get credit on my EIN number, right? So it takes time, is what I tell everyone. There's no magic pill that you can take, to build a business credit profile. There's things you can do to help bolster it and speed up that process a little bit. You can work with vendors that report to the credit bureaus. So as you are interviewing vendors to work with, right? So if it's somebody that you need to get raw material supply from, if it's somebody who's your internet hosting company or your cell phone company for your business cell phones, you can always ask them, hey, do you report to the Creditsafes of the world? Do you report your accounts receivables to the Creditsafes of the world? And you want to try and find vendors that do report. And then you want to make sure you pay them in a timely manner, right? So it's great that they report, but if you pay them late, it's going to be a detriment to your business credit profile. Okay.
Bill, I have a quick question here.
Sure.
So I know with D&B's Paydex score, if you pay a little bit early, you actually that's the only way you can get the highest, credit score with their Paydex score. With you guys, is there anything like that?
So the short answer is no. And I always ask people a kind of a trick question when they bring up the D&B Paydex score. So the Paydex score goes from 0 to 100, right? 100 is the best, 0 is the worst. A perfect Paydex score is an 80. So I always ask people, how do you go from an 80 to 100? If 80 is perfect, how do you go to 100, right? So I haven't run into any user yet that could answer that question. So on our side, we've really simplified things from a payment behavior scoring model. So our equivalent to the Paydex score is called a DBT, or days beyond terms. And that stems from 0 to whatever the number of days late they pay on average. So if you see a DBT of a 5, that means that company pays their bills on average 5 days late. If you see a DBT of 40, that means they pay their bills on average 40 days late. Okay. Throughout my entire career, I've never seen a Paydex score of 100. So I don't know why the scale goes that high, but it does. I've just never witnessed it. I would imagine in order to get to 100, you would probably have to pay your invoice the second you receive it, even if it's on net 30, net 60, net 90, whatever your negotiated terms are. So if I receive my invoice 3 days after I pay for my order, or after I order or something, and pay it immediately, maybe I could get it to 100. I'm not sure. That's a good question.
That's interesting too, because from a data contribution standpoint, we don't recommend paying your invoice the day that is given to you, because the way the file is set up, you could technically get your product, pay it off, and since it's a 0 on the close reporting date, it's just going to show a 0 balance when we send it over to the bureaus. So that transaction having a balance is never actually going to be shown.
You're exactly right. And it's also a cash management strategy, right? So, if folks are out there trying to get this score as high as they possibly can, and maybe paying for goods and or services before they actually receive them. So from a cash management strategy standpoint, it also does not make sense to pay the invoice as soon as you get it. Yeah. So I love that advice that you're giving out there, right? So the only way to show that you're able to take care of a balance is to show that you at one point in time had a balance, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. It's very similar with personal credit, right? Like if you purchase a car, your score is going to go up. And then ironically, I sold the car and paid it off and my score went down.
Right. Because you had a closed account. Correct. Yeah. The people that say, well, I just pay cash for everything. Well, they have no credit whatsoever, typically. Right. So sometimes that's worse than having bad credit. Sure. So there's pros and cons to any different approach, but from a building a business credit standpoint, I love where your head's at and what you're advising your clients to do. Okay.
So recap, pay your bills on time, obviously pay your invoices on time. And what we're looking for with you guys is a DBT, days beyond term, of 0. Is that right?
That's perfect. Correct. Yep. Now you'll see in the reports when we dive in, we'll give industry comparisons. How does this company that you're viewing pay versus everyone else in their industry? So some industries have a notoriously, if you look down paper, a notoriously bad DBT score. Maybe it's a 20 or a 30, right? So I hate to pick on construction, but they're typically a pay when get paid industry, right? So as contractors are working out there, when they get paid, they pay their bills. So they are usually late. So they may have a DBT score in the double digits. But when you look at it as versus the industry, they still may pay better than their peers, right? So if someone has, a DBT of a 10, but the industry average is a 20, that means they pay on average 50% quicker than their competitors, right? So there's other nuances that we teach our clients to take a look at. The old adage, the devil's in the details, right? So, when we look at a report and you can see the granular payment data, that's where those marginal decisions, the customers that, do I want to extend terms? Everything doesn't look perfect, but that's when you dive into the details to make the better decision. So again, take a long-term strategy when building your credit profile. Try to identify companies and vendors that report to the credit bureaus. Okay. So you can build out this credit profile, and then you can have standalone buying power on your business instead of having to personally guarantee things or put up your own personal assets for a guarantee.
Okay. That's quite interesting. We've been having this series, like the road to 100,000, right? Talking to our customers, like what are the steps 1, 2, 3 to get these $100,000 lines of credit. And like everyone we've talked to, funders, other entrepreneurs, it's the same thing. Is like the focus should really be on building the fundamentals of your business and building the business and having a strong base for it, and then reaching out for like these loans. So when we think of like business credit reports, typically we're like, okay, let's receive them so we can see where we're at. But what you guys are saying is like, maybe we should be using these reports to do some due diligence on our vendors we're working with to make sure they're paying us on time, right? So instead of like, how can I get this? Like, how could I make sure that, I'm a catering company, right? We have a lot of caterers in here and we're doing a wedding. How do I know that this venue is paying their bills on time, or I'm going to be chasing that bill for 60 days? And then I'm going to pay my vendors late, which is going to decrease my credit score. That's quite interesting, using it kind of in the inverse of what we typically do.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. The the primary function in a corporation that we work with is a credit manager, right? And one of the things that I've always tried to point them in the direction of doing is who is your peer in the supply chain or in your vendor management group. From a catering perspective, who are my critical relationships, right? Who, if there was a disruption in delivery, would interrupt my business as usual, my day to day, right? So if I'm getting all of my supplies from U.S. Foods and there's a large issue with U.S. Foods that I'm unaware of, and now my shipments are delayed, now I can't deliver to the customers that have booked me to perform my catering services. And then on the flip side, what you described for the venue, having to chase the venue for payment, we call that float. So every day that they're late on their invoice, you have to float that cost. You're floating that cost, right? So, there's a specific measurement for that called DSO, which is days sales outstanding, right? And every day of longer DSO costs you cash flow, costs you interest. There's lost opportunity cost that compounds. Especially for small businesses and new businesses, cash is king. So the sooner you can get cash in the door, the better off you're going to be, right? So using the credit report to evaluate vendors and customers is critical. And most people skip the vendor side of things.
Yeah, I love that DSO score.
Yeah, absolutely. So why again is the trade payment data so important? Okay, so not all trade payment data is equal. Again, if you are a cash struggling business, you're going to pay your critical vendors before you pay anyone else. Who's essential for me to operate my business? Okay, also payment hierarchy can reveal other risks that may be lying below the surface. So if there's a family of companies that are all legally related, how are they all paying their bills? And we provide this type of insight to our clients so they can gauge a full 360-degree view of their risk. Okay. And then I mentioned the criticality of a relationship, right? So if you have a web hosting company or if you're an e-commerce company and you're using AWS to host your website and AWS goes down, that's a problem, right? So how are we monitoring, AWS? So we provide near real-time monitoring on any customers that you want to monitor as well. So staying abreast of these information, doing your review up front is great, but how are we watching things constantly and all the time to ensure there's no business disruption? So just on an overall level, to show you the amount of trade payment data that we've been collecting over the years, right? So there's various avenues that we collect trade payment data. We get it from our customers directly. They'll send us their AR files either bi-weekly or monthly. And then we also get it through what's called trade credit circles and also through partnerships. So we've crested the 800 million payment experience mark back in 2025. So it's very shortly where we'll be cresting 1 billion payment experiences. Now, if you look at the dollar values, we're at over almost $12 trillion, right? That's a lot of money that we're tracking and how it's getting paid to people, okay? So again, all of this data is the backbone of a United States U.S. commercial credit report. Industry groups. So Creditsafe has now become the industry leader in what's called industry trade groups, where if you're in a particular industry, you have the ability to join one of these groups, and you can see how companies or customers are paying specifically companies in that group, right? So if you're in construction and building materials and you're looking to do business with somebody, how are they paying everyone else that might be in that same industry? Okay.
I know in
Healthcare.
agriculture, this is huge. I have a friend
Correct.
who's a farmer, and he supplies onions to Chipotle and Walmart, and they have like these trade groups where they can reference each other. So yeah, 100%. Because something, if your fertilizer shows up late or doesn't show up, that destroys your whole crop season. So it's really, really important to have these insights.
Yes, correct. And we are leading the path forward in this area particularly, and this has been an explosive growth area for us the last 24 months, where we now have 62 leading trade groups. This is very labor intensive to stand up, to create, to maintain. There's antitrust, Federal Trade Commission regulatory requirements we have to abide by, and all the participants have to abide by. So, you have to avoid price collusion and all these other things, right, that we have to be very, very mindful of and govern this. So because there's a large cost to doing this, our competitors have stayed away from it. So we just kind of took the bull by the horns and we're running with it. And it's been a game changer for us. So in these 62 different industry trade groups, we know 100% certain that we have best in class trade payment data, because we're getting it directly from all of the major companies in those industries. Some of them are listed on the right there. That's just a handful of companies that are household names. Right. So again, we're blazing the trail there. We're coming up on the end of the presentation part of this. And before I turn it over to Danica to take a look at a live report, a couple of basic things when you're looking at a company credit report. What do you look at? Right. So first step is, what's their credit score and what does that credit score mean? Right. So, the two primary credit bureaus or providers in the U.S. are Creditsafe and Dun & Bradstreet, right? Everybody knows Dun & Bradstreet's Paydex and their Dun's number and this and that, right? But, sometimes we used to have an inside joke that said you needed a PhD in D&B to read their reports, right? Because they offer so many different risk scores. So how do I know which risk score pertains to me? So what we've done is simplified things, right? And most companies want to know two things. Number one, am I going to get paid on time or suffer a significant payment delay of 90 days or greater? And is this business going to be around in 12 months? Right. So we've combined those two predictive models into one singular score. You want to take a look at their payment history. How are they paying everyone else? So, the risk score and the credit score is a future looking predictable score and rating, where payment history, the only thing we have to go on is the past, right? So it's an evaluation of how they've performed in the past. It's kind of like those of you who invest in the stock market, you'll always see that disclaimer at the bottom of a prospectus that says past performance is no indication of future performance. it's kind of like the same thing, right? So if a business goes into a speed bump or, a negative growth trajectory, they may have some cash flow problems. Maybe they pay their bills a bit slow, but the best thing to do is see how they've paid up until this point. Obviously, we want to check legal filings, make sure they're not in bankruptcy. Do they have major tax liens? Or we're going to show you an example of a company that was a smaller to mid-sized company that had a large judgment against it and what it did to their cash flow, right? And then ownership details. Who owns that company? Are they being bought and sold, right? Who's their parent company? If I'm not getting paid by somebody, by the company I'm directly working with, is there someone else I can pursue to get those funds? Using this data in aggregate has allowed us to predict 70% of bankruptcies within accuracy in the United States. Okay. And it's because of the amount of data that we're constantly collecting and updating, right? So what we do is we teach our clients to look for certain trends in certain areas to see, is there a potential bankruptcy on the horizon? How do you improve your business score? We touched on this a little bit, but Aaron said earlier, pay your bills on time, right? So that's number one, is you need to pay your bills on time. That's the same across commercial and consumer credit. And then working with vendors that report. If you have good vendor relationships, you can ask them to report to Creditsafe, right? It's free for them to report to us. They actually receive a bunch of benefits by reporting to us. We provide free services to them for doing that. And it helps the overall economy. A lot of times we hear from customers that say, well, this company paid me bad, or I had to write off this bad debt. I want to report them. Well, let's reward your good paying customers too, right? So yes, we want to penalize those who aren't paying on time, but we also want to reward those who are. It's great for the economy. Okay. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to turn this over to Danica. She's going to show you what some live credit reports, but again, we're going to look at some reports in a couple different regions. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and Danica, feel free to take it away.
All right.
Before we transition, I have a quick question for you, Bill. Well, I love in your presentation how you show us the big names that you're working with. So many data points, so many customers. But I think there's sometimes in business credit, sometimes people forget about Creditsafe because they're thinking about Dun & Bradstreet and some of the other bigger names. Could you give us a little bit more insight into some of the data areas that you guys power here in the US?
Yeah. So what we've really cut our teeth on here in the United States is our coverage on the small and mid-sized companies. They're notoriously hard to get data on, right? Because they're small and they're mid-sized, right? So we've done a great job pulling in alternative data sources, that will allow better insight into those small and mid-sized companies and newer companies. So one of the things that we'll talk about when Danica does her demo is what we call financial payment data, which is non-traditional trade payment data. Inside of a commercial credit report in the past, historically, how you paid your bank was never included inside of trade payment data, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? How you pay your credit cards is a huge factor in your consumer credit report, right? So having access to what we call financial payment data, which is how a company pays their corporate credit cards, open lines of credit, lease informations, and term loans, is huge for small and mid-sized companies. On the surface level, someone may turn down a company for credit because they don't have access to this financial payment data. When they come then work with Creditsafe and maybe get to see what some of that financial payment data looks like, could drastically change the picture and the outcome of that transaction. So that's just one of the areas where we gather alternative data sources to get this type of information to help the small and mid-sized company. Because
I think that's like why FairFigure and Creditsafe has had such a great relationship over the years. We work with the small businesses that do not exist in the Creditsafe database or anyone's business credit profile. They probably formed their company 2 or 3 months ago. It might have just popped up in the Secretary of State, and we send you guys thousands of records every month of new businesses to help kind of create that first initial profile. So it's a really cool like relationship that we have with your bureau.
And that's an interesting point, because how is a commercial credit profile even born, right? So, all of us major bureaus collect data in the same way for probably 80 to 90% of the data, right? The differentiator is the other 10 to 20% that we gather. And it's because of relationships like with Aaron and FairFigure that helps small businesses create these credit profiles quicker, faster, and cleaner, right? So we know we're getting good data, from Aaron and team when they submit it to us, and we build that profile out. And again, it's a crawl, walk, run approach. There's no one that's getting off the ground unless you're a unicorn and you're pulling in, $100+ million in funding, where you're going to be giving these large lines of credit, right?
I have to say, I think we move pretty quick, considering like in the bureau's name, it's bureaucratic and slow by nature. We're sending you guys data, and within like 2 or 3 business days, you guys have a profile made. So it's slow, but like not that slow. I think we're doing a pretty good job at it.
No, I agree 100%. One of the things I love about Creditsafe, coming from the big company, is how quickly we can move things, right? So even though globally we're a massive organization, we operate like a startup. We're extremely nimble. When we get feedback from clients about our platform, it's something that we can make changes on virtually immediately, which is unheard of in our industry.
Well,
With
yeah,
that
thanks
being
for taking
said-
the time on that. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
No, awesome. So can you guys see my screen?
Oh, let me pull that up here. Yep, coming through.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so this is the exciting part about my job. I get to work with so many companies every day, and just again helping them build their business profile, or just protecting them from their potential vendors, or risky deals or companies that they're working with. So this is just like a sneak peek, into our platform. So you have our home screen. A lot of feedback that we get is it's very easy to read. You have your countries that you can click on. You have your search bar. So I'm going to go through a couple reports here. So one, I'm just going to pick on Creditsafe, right? So once the report loads, as you'll see, here's our dashboard. So everything, like I said, is really easy to read. We color code everything. You want to see green. Green is good. So you can even have your 5-year-olds drive this for you to interpret these kind of reports, which is great. We have our score and limit indicators. We're rating businesses from that 1 to 100. We include an international score in there, which is like a global key. We include our credit limits, compliance alerts. So compliance is huge. You don't want to do business with a company who is on that sanctions business list or a watch list. Derogatory legal, so your legal filings, you want to know if there are any legal filings. This is a soft OFAC check, so that stands for Office of Foreign Asset Control. So pretty easy, yes or no in that box. But like I said, you see the trend here, everything is good. And then you can go into as far as payment details. So we really break down our payment details, trade lines, anything that's outstanding. We break it down by industry breakdowns. Where is that trade coming from as we get these, like I said, companies that report over to us. So I'm going to click on also our, we have our UK report. So, if you're curious, what does a UK report look like? If I'm extending credit, across the seas, you same kind of idea here with the score and limit indicators. Same thing with the payment data, trade data. And as you see the trend, like I said, green, and that's what you want to see when you're looking at companies. What's really nice that Creditsafe offers is the group structure hierarchy. So who's the ultimate holding company? Who are those sister companies, subsidiary companies? And then we dedicate a whole tab to the financials. So you can look at that. And, of course, again, you want to see the green here. Now, if we take a look at a report that maybe isn't doing so great, what does that look like, right? So I'm going to click on this company. It's called Evoke Wellness. So you'll see here, they have a risk score of a 26. Creditsafe isn't even recommending a credit limit to this company, and they have a compliance alert. So immediately when I'm looking at this report and how I'm reading it is, okay, I need to dig into the details here. What is that compliance alert? This also ties in to our compliance products. But again, it's huge to screen the companies that you're working with. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that screening, that business screening of the company. And it looks like there's an enforcement for Evoke Wellness LLC. So I'm going to click into view the details here, and we're going to click into the AML categories. So for example, it looks like this category is because they need to pay a 1.9 million in settlement to the FTC claims. So again, what's nice is the knowledge to know who you're working with before you work with that company. So like I said, that this is one of the key things that's nice when you're looking at Creditsafe. And I think a huge thing that we've been talking about here is the trade payments, and how important that is. So not only do we get like the traditional where, again, as Bill said, companies are reporting to Creditsafe, we really worked it out where we're filling in all the gaps and areas. So this financial payment data that we touched on, so you have this coming from the top financial institutions. And so where, not only do you get a blended report of who's reporting on that company, but also you get to know commercial credit cards, how many business leases, open-ended credit lines, do they have, what's available, what's used, their total line. So it makes that conversation a lot easier when you're looking to, extend, hey, what is everyone else saying about them? But also more importantly, how are they doing business with the banks? Do they have that creditworthiness? So any delinquent accounts, charged off accounts, that kind of thing. And again, trade payment is just so important for Creditsafe that we even take it a step further, and we offer specialized logistics industry trade. So like we call it Transpo Credit Pro data. So again, specialized to the logistics industry. So Creditsafe's main focus, our core product is the credit reports, but we have so much information to give our customers to really fill any holes and gaps for, again, lack of reporting to the credit bureaus and things like that. Bill, do you think I'm missing anything else here that might be good to show?
No, so I think you did a fantastic job, right? So, the transportation credit data is huge for transportation and factoring companies, right? If you have critical loads that you're shipping all over the country, how do you know that
we have a lot of
company is trustworthy?
Platform for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could just quickly touch upon that enforcement against Evoke Wellness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you could go back to the credit report on that one, Danica. So here's the interesting thing is how can a $1.9 million enforcement, which the government is mandating they pay, affect the company? Well, this company, if you click on company details tab for me, they're a $17.5 million company. So virtually more than 10% of their revenue has to be given away because of unscrupulous business practices. Okay. What do you think caused the decline in their risk score? Look at their payment score of a 40. So they're paying 40 days late. So are they staying afloat? Are they going to make it? We don't know. Time will tell, right? But if I'm a credit manager, I know I'm not extending credit to these folks until they can demonstrate that they have the ability to overcome that type of enforcement settlement.
That's a great call out. And I like something that you guys just said right before that, which was, you've got all this transportation data. If you're in trucking or transportation, this is really, Creditsafe is really important. And factoring, you guys mentioned. So if somebody's looking for invoice factoring, there's a good chance Creditsafe might be underwriting that decision. The lender might be using Creditsafe.
Mm-hmm.
We own the factoring space from a market share standpoint, right? So we work with all the major factoring companies. We've been major sponsor of the IFA, which is the International Factoring Association, for years. So, if you're working with a factoring company, to Garrett's point, it's highly likely they're using Creditsafe to determine what their fees are for a particular account.
Very cool. Well, thanks, guys. This was awesome. I think we're about that point in our presentation where we want to open it up to questions. We've seen a few go in here. Gigi, it looks like you're ready to hop on stage. She's joining us from New York City Fashion Week with her hair blowing in the wind.
I have the fan going, guys. Don't mind my hair.
What questions do we have?
Okay, so our first question from Paul. I personally supply data to Experian. Does Creditsafe score reflect credit utilization as well as days past due?
You want me to take that, Danica?
Sure, you take the first one.
Yeah, so credit utilization is a factor in the reporting, right? As well as days past due. So all of that is factored into the risk score, and also the granular detail will be inside of what's called the DBT score, or the trade payment data details section. There's also, if you contribute trade to us, you get access to what's called advanced trade payment data, where you could actually drill down month by month, year over year by industry, which again is extremely helpful for those marginal customers and or those small and mid-sized companies where there might not be a lot of business. And I do have to just say, like, I'm totally jealous of Gigi's hair just flowing in the wind right there. I mean,
Thank you. Okay. Next one is from Mark. What are some good software tools that people are using for AR when reporting customer data?
Ooh, that's a good one. So Bill, I mean, immediately when I hear that, that's the Ledger Insights, which I didn't show earlier, but we have a really a tool where it marries your sales ledger. So a lot of companies are, reporting their trade experiences to Creditsafe, and then in return, we're giving them all this value where we're able to rate their customers from low to high risk. So I think if that's something that everyone's interested in, they should definitely, I'll share our QR code at the end and we can talk more about it, but definitely our Ledger Insights tool. And Bill, if I've forgotten anything else, please share.
No, you're spot on. The one thing that we pride ourselves on is making it easy to work with us, right? So whether it's from a contractual standpoint, we're easy to work with. Whether it's from a technology standpoint, we have best-in-class technology. So our customers that are contributing trade payment data, we automate that for them, right? So, again, showing my age here to the infomercial era, but whoever remembers that infomercial where the guy would say, set it and forget it. That's kind of what we do, right? So once we set up your file to be transmitted, it's automated for you. And then the benefits that you get by getting access to certain tools that Danica just mentioned are invaluable.
All right, next one from Ayana. Our customers have been asking us to start reporting to Creditsafe. What would be the next steps for us to start reporting to Creditsafe?
Absolutely. So again, that's another one. You can certainly reach out to me, but really easy. It's a flat file, Excel, CSV, and key things are just headers, making sure we have the right information: company name, address, city, state, zip code, 2-digit country code. So like I said, you submit that file over to us. We do all the heavy lifting for you, getting that matched. Like I said, we make it easy.
Okay, next one from Lisa. What vendor would you recommend to build credit when starting out?
FairFigure.
Exactly.
There you go.
I'll jump in here. FairFigure should be really step one after you guys open your LLC. We're going to go tell Creditsafe that you guys exist. Sorry, my dog's huffing and puffing. We're going to tell Creditsafe that you guys exist. They're going to make the file for you. We're going to allow you to check your scores across multiple bureaus. The report that we present is kind of like a summary report. Creditsafe has the full report. We kind of took some data points that we thought were critical for your business credit building experience and put it there. And then we're going to offer you funding on the LIFT program. So we're going to fund you a small amount, $500, $1,000, $2,000. You're going to hopefully pay us back on time, and we're going to tell Creditsafe that you guys paid on time. And I think it's a really, really great step one on the journey. And also the money that we're loaning you guys could use it for other net 30 vendors as well. You have your Quills and Ulines. Creditsafe, I don't know if you guys have any vendors you'd recommend.
So legally, Aaron, we can't disclose who reports trade to us. But there's there's major office supply companies that are out there that report. There's major auto parts companies, household names. People can typically figure it out.
Yeah, I saw on your deck, I saw T-Mobile would be interesting. So we were talking to some underwriters a few weeks ago on getting a business phone line. So it probably makes sense to get a T-Mobile business line to help build those scores as well. I mean, you guys need a business phone number anyway. Might as well have it report.
Okay. The last question I have here from Mark. What tier 1 or 2 banks use Creditsafe?
Again, legally, we can't disclose who our customers are unless they've given us expressed written permission. If you go onto our website, though, you can see lots of testimonies from companies in various industries, some financial services, lots of logistics, lots of wholesale distribution. There's a myriad of industries where we have testimonials and things from customers, but legally, I'm sorry, I can't disclose particular names of banks.
Okay, and we just got in one.
I want to jump in really quick. That's why I wanted to call out the factoring. That even though they were dropping us little clues throughout the presentation today. Again, anytime you're going to probably apply for invoice factoring, Creditsafe is most likely going to be the vendor that your lender uses to check. So that's a good clue right there. Good starting point.
Yep.
Okay, another one from Paul. How does a vendor who gives net 30 terms get listed on FairFigure's net 30s list?
Yeah, drop an email over to support@fairfigure.com. We have our due diligence process with net 30 vendors. Unfortunately, the way the industry works is it's based on affiliate marketing. So a lot of websites are incentivized to promote, whoever's paying them the most when it comes to net 30 vendors. We do our due diligence and make sure they're actually reporting. How do we do that? We have relationships with the bureaus, so we can check there. We have accounts that will make an account and then check the business credit reports to see how they're reporting and when they're reporting. And then once they pass our test, then we'll put them on the marketplace. So, if you have a vendor and you're interested to go through that process, welcome it. Shoot us an email, support@fairfigure.com, and one of our underwriting team will reach out to you.
Well, thanks for the great questions today. We want to make sure we didn't forget our promise to you guys that you can get a free Creditsafe credit report for your business or for another business you want to check the credit of. So, Danica, I noticed you dropped your email address in the comments. Maybe I can do that again? And then did you also have a QR code you were saying earlier?
Yep, we do. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, that is my email address. So feel free, to ask me any questions. Like I said, me and Bill are here to assist you with. I will also share my screen again, and I can share the QR code for everybody.
Get your phones ready.
All right. I don't know if everyone can see this.
And then I just dropped a comment. I'm going to pin that to the top of the chat. So you've got both routes there. We've got both routes there. And then really quick, just to clarify for people. So again, in our product, and even in our with a free FairFigure account, you can get your Creditsafe score and report, but it's not all the information. It's limited. It's not the whole report. And so Creditsafe is offering the full deal here completely for free. It's incredible value. And then on top of that, if you don't want it just for your own business, you can actually use this free report for somebody else's business that maybe you're doing due diligence on if you want to do business with them.
Sorry, muted. I love that. Yeah, it'd be cool to just pull up a report on someone that you intend on working with in the future. Hey, maybe if you're going to work out the new Net 30 vendor, why don't you go pull their report and see, if they're on the up and up, if they have any, UCCs, just use it for research on your own business and who you're going to be working with. I love that.
So I actually had a little experience here in a side business that I have. There was a company who wanted to pay me. They wanted me to extend them Net 30 terms, and I say, well, I don't know how I feel about that. I normally charge up front, and so I checked their business credit, and lo and behold, they had an outstanding tax lien from the county that they were in. In other words, a huge bill that they did not pay to the government. I brought that to their attention, and that was starting point for negotiations.
Yep.
So
Well
data
done,
can
well
definitely
done.
be your data can definitely be your friend. All right. Well, I think that's everything for today, guys. Thanks again for joining us. Again, if you weren't quite able to get that, if you weren't fast on the draw and getting that QR code or getting Danica's email address, this will be getting emailed out to you over the next few minutes. Thanks again for joining, and hope to see you guys on the next webinar.
Ciao. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you.
you having us. Thank you.
Yeah.